All right, welcome back. Hey, before we get started, I just a little housekeeping note here. I just love to always read out kind of shout outs, reviews, and such like that. So we just had a review over on Apple Podcast from Run Faithful T. Run Faithful T gives us 5 stars and says, "I absolutely love the state meet qualifying podcast series. I love hearing about the unique features of each state's qualifying process. Great idea to develop a podcast series around this topic." So Run Faithful T, thank you so much for taking the time to give us a review on Apple Podcast. If you don't know what she's talking about, I assume man, I don't know. That's probably a bad assumption. If you don't know what they are talking about, back in April and May, we interviewed a high school coach from every state in the country, including Washington, D.C., and talked about their state meet qualifying. So it was really cool to learn about the different events they do, how they qualify, meet of champs, all that kind of good stuff. So go check that out. And one of those states that we interviewed was in North Carolina, and that's where we're going today. So let's get to it. Help me welcome the Associate Director of Track and Field, and we're going to learn assistant coach. Now, that's going to be a new thing here. Help me welcome the wise, the wonderful Miss Jess Riden. Jess, how are you?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting me get through that big, long intro there.
That's okay.
Normally, it's a little faster.
That's okay.
Hey, first of all, when we're recording this, we're coming off of ACC championships. So really appreciate your time. You know, the most important, valuable thing you can ever give me is time. So during the middle of season, during the middle of championship season, for you to give me some time today and all of our listeners, man, just really grateful for that. So just wanted to, on the outset here, just say thanks for your time that you're giving us here today. Really do appreciate that.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
Me too, because, you know, typically when someone comes to the Gill Connections podcast and presses play, they're pressing play to learn about Mouse Holloway and his journey and how he became the University of Florida head coach. Or, you know, a couple of weeks ago, we had Mike Turgeon, head coach at Division II Minnesota State. We've had high school coaches here. Typically, we are focusing on coaches. And, you know, one of the reasons, and you and I talked about this a while back, that we wanted you on the show is you're going to give us a different eye set to track and field, specifically in the, you know, we're going to call it the director of ops lane of track and field. We're going to learn, first of all, what is it? How did you get into it? How did you, you know, you are kind of one of the pioneers in this on the collegiate level as like a full-time gig. So how did that all come about? How you've developed that role and what you're doing today. So I'm excited to like dive in and learn this aspect of it, because this is a real critical part of track and field, in my opinion, as far as the staffing of track and field.
Yeah, no, I think it's super important. And like you and I were just talking about off camera here is that's been sort of one of my goals over the past several years through Sam at the convention is sort of kind of presenting this as a career path, not just an assistant, not just a manager type of deal, not just sort of a 1 or 2 year gig, right? Like this can be a career, and it's one that's certainly necessary, not just kind of the day-to-day nuts and bolts of, you know, compliance and budget and travel and all these things, but like establishing yourself as a meet director. Like I've been the meet director at Penn State, Washington, and Stanford, right? Like, and left Stanford is the meet director for the Prefontaine Classic, and dropped the mic and left, right? Like, so like I haven't hosted a big meet since then, because that was so much. But yeah, so I think it's an important conversation, right? Yeah. Because I think a lot of people, and I've had this conversation with people too, where it's like, you know, like I'm just getting tagged with the ops stuff and I don't want to do, and it's like, well, buddy, if you want to be a head coach, like you got to know all of this, right? Not just the coaching stuff. So I think it's an important conversation to have, for sure.
Yeah, I think anything, you know, I'm a big fan of coaches, and track and field coaches specifically, on every level, high school, college, doesn't matter to me. So anything that advances the professionalism of coaching, you know, I think we probably learned here through, you know, 260 plus episodes, most of people getting into coaching track and field and whatever level do it because they love being on the track. They love taking distance runners through 800-meter repeats, being in the long jump sand pit, helping people there, you know, high jump, things like that, throwing. There's just a love of helping young people get better at a craft. I think that's you know, I've yet to have anybody come here and say, yeah, I really wanted to be a coach so I could fill out compliance paperwork. I haven't had that yet. Maybe 100%. maybe one day. But like you said, those are parts of the job though, as well, right? Like even as a sales professional, there's part of my job that is not just talking to customers and writing up POs. There's a lot of other things that I have to do. So anything that helps create advance the professionalism of the profession of coaching track and field. And to your point with USTFCCA, and I've seen this with other clinics, and I'm super proud of this. It wasn't that long ago. You go to USTFCCA convention, high school track clinics, et cetera, around the country, and 99.9% of the presentations were how to coach a quarter miler better, how to coach hurdles, how to do a glide in the shot put, et cetera. And those are extremely valuable. That type of coaching education, it's great that we're sharing ideas with each other. Now I've seen in the past couple of years, kind of this shift of more emphasis on the profession, whether it's at USTFCCA convention about, director of ops, like what does that mean for your school? How do you get one started? What is that person in charge of? To networking, resume building, mental health for coaches and athletes as well. So really love that there's this greater attention to, again, I keep calling it the professionalism of coaching track and field, not just being on the track. And you are certainly one of those parts, and you're going to help us learn even more parts today. And that's why I'm excited about having you. So let's get in our Wayback Machine here, Jess. Let's start. We know you're involved in track. I hate to assume. I've learned after 200 episodes not to assume. Where does track start for you? Were you an athlete, high school, college? Talk to us about kind of that athletic side, if there is one.
Yeah, no. So I'm from a little town called Reedsville, Pennsylvania, which is about 20 minutes from State College.
Okay.
So high school sports and football are king around there, Penn State football in particular. And I was always brought up in a family that everyone was playing sports, everyone was really into sports. But at the time for me, like there wasn't a ton of opportunities for girls. There probably more so than in the past, but like I played softball, I played basketball, and there were tons of opportunities for girls. I don't want to say there weren't, but like it wasn't like there was like the 6-year-old softball team at the time, right? Like it was more like in the middle school, junior high range. So I was playing a lot of basketball. I think that was my first love sports wise. I played softball, and I get to my 9th grade year. And in your 9th grade year, I love basketball, but suffice it to say, I wasn't very good at it. So you can either play junior high in the fall or try out for the JV varsity in the wintertime. That's how it worked in my town. So I opted to play JV basketball my 9th grade year, or not JV, junior high basketball my 9th grade year. So that was fall. I was a manager for the varsity team that winter. Then I played softball as a freshman. So then flip screen to the next fall as a sophomore, I had to pick a sport to play because I was then going to play basketball in the winter. So the options in my town were effectively volleyball. They weren't very good. Field hockey. I was not about to wear a skirt. Soccer, I didn't understand it. And then there was cross country. And in cross country, it was like a couple of the girls that were really good at basketball had been running cross country in order to get in shape. So I was like, okay, this might be the thing for me. So I go out that fall. I'm our 5th runner. And our high school team was pretty respectable. They were always pretty respectable in the district, maybe get a couple of kids to the state meet or something. We had a really good coach who had won a few state titles like back in the day. And he knew what he was talking about looking back on it. Like he was pretty good at the time. And so like you get there and I'm the 5th runner, we make the state meet, and it's like, man, these people are really excited to have me here. Like, this is sort of cool, So it's just like, it's sort of like such an embracing culture as a distance runner where it's like, it's just like, you're all just suffering together. Right. Like, and I was pretty good at it, at least at the time within my area. Right. And we made the state meet, and we hadn't made the state meet in a number of years, and everyone was just excited. And it was like, okay, maybe this might be my thing. That's cool. I kept playing. So I did cross country, basketball, softball, up until my senior year. So I ran okay. And looking back on it, it wasn't that okay. Like, I wouldn't have recruited me.
So no track.
I never ran
country. Okay. All right.
Yeah. No, I was just running cross country because I was still playing softball.
Right.
And then after the state meet my senior year, I had my coach reach out to Beth at Penn State and see if there was an opportunity, because I'd already gotten into school. And she said that she would let me walk on. And then I ran track that outdoor season.
Okay, you did run track your okay. I was like, wow, you went to Penn State with with
Yeah.
zero track experience. That has to be unique.
Yeah.
Okay. So we did do track your senior year. How did
Yeah.
you like, you're coming from a lot of team oriented sports, the basketball, softball, there's a winner loser on each team,
Mhm.
and you need a pitcher and a batter and all those kind of things. Cross country, very team, like you said, you automatically right off the bat, you're like, I was our fifth runner, like, where you
Yep.
are in the team. And then you go to track, which is a little bit tougher sometimes to
Yep.
be a team aspect. And this seems like kind of one of your first, like, individual, air quotes there,
Mhm.
sport. How did you like it, not like it? How did that experience go?
I mean, looking back on it, like, I don't even know that I had any idea what was going on at the time, right?
Sure.
Like, I'm not from like, no one in my family ever ran. It wasn't like a big, a distance or track and field culture where I'm from. Like, people compete in it, but it's in it, even at that time, it wasn't like you're going to the New Balance Nationals or the Nike Nationals or anything like that. So like, I made the state meet in the 2 mile as a senior, and I was like, okay, I guess this is what you're supposed to do, right? Like,
so you were, I mean, because Pennsylvania is a state now. Like, no, I'm from Alabama, so I'll make fun of
yeah,
Alabama. Alabama's not the toughest. There's certainly events that are tough in Alabama, but I'll say it this way: I made it to state every year I ran track in Alabama. That should tell you how it ain't that hard to get there. Pennsylvania, that's a Haas state now, and you made it to state. You didn't even do track. I know you're doing cross country and stuff, but you didn't even do track until your senior. You made it to the state meet. That seems like a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think so at the time. Like, it certainly, like, I certainly didn't win. Like, I think I might have been like second to last or something. But but I was if I remember correctly, I might have been the only girl to make it, maybe one of two. And there was a guy in my class who was like 3-time. For whatever reason, like, there's a really good high school coach. Like, my high school was really good in the javelin. So like, there's several state titleists from my high school. So like, there was a kid who was like on his third javelin win. Like, so I think it was just me and him, maybe one other guy. So it's not my high school's not large. Like, it was probably 1,000 kids. And then, so there was 2 high schools in my hometown, Lewistown, and then I went to Indian Valley, and those 2 have since combined, and it's now called Mifflin County. So that's the long and short of my high school experience.
And it seems like you mentioned Penn State country, and I know Pennsylvania is one of those states where Penn State, there's a flagship school, and I know no shade to University of Pittsburgh and all that. They're a great school as well, but man, Penn State kind of runs that state overall. That was a big dream to go to school there.
I think so. Like, I remember my oldest brother getting like college recruiting letters and stuff. And he only ever wanted to go to Penn State, and like, cause he wanted to go to football games. He wanted to do the whole thing. And like, I remember him, like, my older brother is like 5 years older than me. And I remember him getting like letters from like the University of Miami or something. And I'm like, why would you not respond to this? Like, this is awesome. But then when you actually like have to make that decision by yourself, and I certainly learned this working at Penn State too. Like, Penn State's one of those places, either you're dying to go or you're dying to get away, right? And so like, I was one who was dying to go, and I don't know that I've ever made a better decision, but so that's sort of the way it is in my town. Like, it's everybody's into Penn State. Of course, there's the occasional person who randomly picks Notre Dame as their like,
sure,
is the school in their heart, right? Even though they've never been there. But
okay, look, I'm glad you said that, and I have certainly softened my stance on Notre Dame. I do love them, selfishly.
For example,
business wise, when a school picks Gill equipment, it's hard to hate on them. But I grew up hating on Notre Dame because exactly that.
Yeah,
people would love, and it really just shows you that Notre Dame honestly is a nationwide
it's a massive
brand. Yeah. But people would be like, they had no clue what state it was in. Certainly couldn't name the city it was in. And it's like, oh, but I'm Irish. I'm like, yeah, that's like, literally, what's that got to do with it? Or I'm Catholic. I'm like, again, what does that got? I don't get it. I'm glad you said that, because that just always bugged me growing up. Yeah.
No, so for the most part, it's all Penn State, Penn State football, and now all Penn State wrestling. So like, my whole family's massive wrestling fans. They have season tickets. Yeah.
Why?
My dad wrestled in high school. My brothers wrestled in high school too. Like, all my nephews wrestle. Like, it's for whatever reason, Pennsylvania is a wrestling state, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you win 11 out of 13 national titles, it's hard not to be a fan, right?
Yeah, sure.
So
That always
yeah,
helps. Yeah.
I would just, speaking for my community at large, those are the big deals. High school sports, Penn State football, Penn State wrestling.
So you go to Penn State. First of all, love that you get to go there and Beth Alfred Sullivan is there. One of my favorite people in the whole world. By the way, podcast alum, if you're listening, you ever want to know about Beth Alfred, let me tell you the kind of person she is, first of all. So Beth was the head coach at University of Tennessee. You know her well enough, Jess. You will not be surprised by this story. So she's the head coach at the University of Tennessee. Whatever happens there. She no longer has a job. Beth and I had spoken during that season, and she's like, "Yeah, I want to be on the podcast. That'll be great." I invited her. I love that. It was great. And as we're working on scheduling, which is literally the hardest part of this podcast, by the way, is trying to match up schedules. So as Beth and I are trying to match up schedules, whatever happens. She no longer is at the University of Tennessee. And, my first thought, and you'd probably maybe have the same thought. It's like, oh, well, she's not going to be on the podcast now. She's going to be a little busy trying to find another job. She doesn't want to, there's some embarrassment to it, things like that.
Right.
And so I'm literally like, oh, I give her the out. I'm like, hey, Beth, obviously you're not, we'll pick this up next year or whatever. She's like, oh, no, absolutely. No, we're still scheduled. Let's do it. We're going to do this. Right. So she comes onto the podcast after going through that's a hard thing to go through, and just is open book, tells the story from her side. And I will never, ever forget that someone, because she's like, and I asked her, I was like, hey, so why did you, I asked her on the podcast, like, so why did you agree to keep doing, you could have, we could have done this 6 months from now, a year from now, and, moved on through that part. And she goes, I think it's important for people in our industry to know that sometimes bad things can happen and you can move on, that life will continue on, that you can continue to have success, which she has. As we're recording this, she just won, more conference champions, because that's what she does. But I'm always, so whenever I hear her name, I immediately lighten up, because I just think of her as one of the highest character people I have met. And I've met a ton in this sport, by the way, in this profession. She is at the tippy top. Love her to death. Okay. Sorry. I always give a shout out to Beth.
No. And I'm not where I am without Beth Sullivan.
Right. Yeah. So. I know her. I would assume that. Right. Exactly. Okay. So you go to Penn State, you walk onto the team. Tell us about your experience as an athlete, and what are you thinking at this point as far as a career? Are you going to go on to be a business owner, an accountant? What are you thinking for a profession?
So it's sort of, like I said, like the experience was awesome. And I looking back on it now that I'm doing a bit of coaching, is like, I probably wouldn't have liked me very much. I probably need to apologize to Beth for that. I apologize to Beth basically every time I see her for any number of things. But I just didn't understand the commitment, like it was like this is a really serious thing. And I didn't understand it at the time either. And it's not till now looking back on it, it's like, shoot, like I might have given up an opportunity here because I didn't take it as seriously as I should have. But and I suppose that's probably how a lot of people feel leaving a lot of situations, right? Well, if you look back on them years later. But
you're 18 years old. I still, it's crazy to me that we make, and this is talking about the academic side, and you're talking about the athletic side here, but same thing, how we make 18-year-old kids pick a major, pick a school that will affect the rest of their life. Hey, figure out what you want to be at 40 years old today as an 18-year-old. Go. Right. And it's like, man, these kids don't even know what underwear they're going to wear tomorrow. How in the world are they picking this? So, and I know you do, because I know you well enough. Just give yourself a lot of grace there that you were an 18-year-old kid.
For sure. For sure. And it's like now that we're recruiting juniors heavily, and like we have them on visits, and like even like my freshmen now, like let alone like my fifth years, are like, man, like it's just sort of, there's not really much common ground here. And I'm like, guys, I don't even know that they can drive yet. So it's like, it's weird. And it's weird, like the variance between like the beginning, like when you start the recruiting process and when you leave here as a fifth or sixth year, like that's a lot of growth in there. Yeah. Right. Like, so I agree with you. And we talk about that all the time. Like we're expected to like put these people in a position to perform, when they're also expected to do that in the classroom. They're expected to figure out their housing situation. They're expected to do socially. So this in the end is sort of a fool's errand sometimes, but but anyway, like, so yeah, like I had a great experience. My senior year, we won a Big Ten title, indoors. So that was cool. We did not start there. We started, hell, I don't know, not first, because like this would have been Beth's second year at Penn State after
Okay.
coming from Stanford. That was my freshman year. But academically, like I always knew I wanted to be involved in sports. And like you said, like it's not like being a coach at the time, and this is my freshman year was 2000. So like at the time that wasn't like, other than like Joe Paterno and like Tom Izzo, like there wasn't really a pathway for this, at least not that I knew of, right? But I knew I wanted to be involved in sports. So like I declared athletic training. And I was in that major for like a day because I realized I didn't like to touch people. Like, I don't know what I was thinking there.
That kind of hurts the job prospect.
Yeah,
there, sure.
yeah, it wasn't great. But so then I switched to sports journalism. Yeah, so that's my degree from Penn State, is in sports journalism. And my first two jobs were actually as an SID. So like, I thought that was going to be the direction I went. Like I wanted, I think one of my initial career goals was a couple things. One was to be on ESPN. The other was to be a baseball statistician. Like, cause I always thought that was cool, like the 7 ways to get to first base and stuff like that.
I was about to say, because baseball keeps more stats than anybody.
100%.
They have the stat of, the ERA on a Tuesday night with a full moon.
Yeah,
the games
100%.
That start past 4 o'clock. It's weird.
No, I thought that was
a lot of
fascinating.
stats.
Yeah,
Baseball has all the stats.
But there was a time I wanted to be that person. Like Derek Jeter has a 556 average on Sundays in the rain, right? Like I thought that was intriguing.
Silly. Yeah. So I'm always interested, one of the things and one of the responsibilities I feel like I have at least given myself this responsibility as the host of a podcast with the kind of reach here. I look at our athletes. Surprise, we're going to talk about Beth here a little bit more. I look at our athletes, when you combine boys and girls in high school and men and women in college athletics, we're the number one most participated sport. And we're roughly male and female 50-50, roughly. Yep. Good enough for this stats guy to say 50-50. And amongst races, I don't know what the actual stats are, but we're certainly not 80% white, 20% everybody else. However, when I look at our coaches, I don't see 50-50 men and women, and I don't see, I'll just call it 50-50 minority and white. What I'm curious about, where I'm getting at with this, Jess, is, Beth is, I think the reason I love Beth is when I see or hear her name or I see her, for some reason, I'm kind of a visual guy. So like words pop up in my head. Mm-hmm. I always see in like big bubble letters, leader. That's just what I think of when I think of Beth, what she's done at the different places. It's just amazing to me. How was it as a 18 to 22-year-old? So a kid, you're a kid, 18 to 22, and you're growing, you're learning what leadership is, you're learning what, who should you look and mimic and who should you not? And, all these all these influencers coming at you, and certainly you had professors and things like that. What was it like, especially you're talking about Beth's, I'm gonna call it early years at Penn State of, you weren't number one and you go on to, to win a conference. So could you understand, because hindsight's 2020, but you're in it. Could you understand it in the moment, the type of leader you had there? Like, did you pay attention to what she did, body language, how she said things, etc.? Or was it more of like, hey man, that's my coach, so I'm going to shut up and listen? That could also be, that could be fair as well,
Yeah, no, I think the shut up and listen part, yes. Like, because I remember like when you screw up in college, like you have a like, what am I going to tell my dad? What am I going to tell Coach Sullivan? Like, so like those things pop into your head. So like, there was certainly like, we got along when I was in college. There was certainly respect there. I did not like it. And this is true, like even years later, like being a female in this industry, like when she would say things, I didn't understand what she was talking about until I actually did them. Right. Like she would talk about how hard it was. And then not necessarily when we were athletes, but like she would like being a strong woman and being yourself and all these things. And it's like, yeah, I mean, whatever. Like it's sure, I'll go talk to guys. I don't care.
Yeah. But like I said, that's fair. Cause again, we were 18 to 22 years old. That's still heck, I hire, 23, 24-year-old fresh out of college kids all the time. And I'm always like, yeah, you're in the professional world now. And I'm like, they don't know how to rent an apartment. They're still kids, 100%. So completely understandable.
100%. But like at the time, like you could see kind of what she was doing to build things. Like I think we all noticed that. but now looking back, having tried to do those things myself, like it's, you understand that it was never that easy. Right. And she and I've asked her a couple times, like, how the hell did you do that? Right. Like, and she's like, she's like, I just psyched myself up every morning. I had 8 miles from my house to the office, and I just talked myself into it every day.
Wow.
You know, and so, but like, I still, like, there's not a day that goes by that I have a decision to make and I'm like, ah, shit, what would Beth do? Sorry,
No, I love that. That's your choice. Not, that's all
right.
The reason I asked that question like that, Jess, is because, again, I'm always, now for these past almost 20 years, I'm now on the outside looking in, which is actually, it gives me a unique perspective of, again, the professionalism of track and field for, as coaches. And that same, it's a different font for some reason. That's so weird. You're going to get too much insight into me today, Jess. But that same word, every time I see you, when I see you at a track meet, when I see you at convention, leader has always popped in my head, because I always think of you as one of the first people in this role that elevated the role as well. It was not just a graduate assistant, doing the books, those guys like, oh man, this person like moves the program forward. So that's why I always wondered, it's like, I equate a lot of the same things I do with Beth with you in regards to leadership in our sports. That's why I wondered, I was like, oh, could you see like what you became, what she was and is, so I didn't know if you could sense that or not as a kid, again, we're, talking about 18 years old here. So I get it.
Yeah. At the time you could definitely see the wheels spinning, and she was always very vocal in like what the mission was. And we were going to get to a place where we were winning Big Ten titles. And there was, like I said, there were certainly days that was really hard to believe, but then I saw it within 4 years. Right. So
amazing.
It certainly works.
And you ran all 4 years?
Yeah.
See, I love that, because there's a propensity to think like a director of ops type position, like, oh, they weren't athletic, so they stopped doing the athletes so they could help time or whatever. So you were an athlete first, or I shouldn't say first and foremost, student first, athlete as well on that track and field. Love that. Okay, so you graduate with a degree in sports journalism, which I love. I was a print journalism major, so I love any kind of journalism type majors. Now it's time for the real world. You kind of gave us a hint of what maybe you kind of did next. What was next?
So my first job was at Bucknell University.
The Bison.
The Bison. Yep. Not the Bisons. It's phonetically correct. So I was like the sports information athletic communications intern there. There's days I think back to that, and I've never worked harder in my life, because like there was 3 of us in like, I don't know how many sports, like 30 sports or something like that. So I was covering 6 or 8 sports on my own. Plus I was like the statistician for basketball, the statistician for volleyball. And it was a great year, but it was really an eye-opening experience as far as like the commitment that these things take. Right. And like, it was just, for me, going from 40,000 students to 3,000 students, it was just like, oof, where is everybody? Like, so like that in itself was the rough part, was that transition.
You're like, I had English 101 with more kids.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Awesome.
Like, and the funny part is I went looking for a house. Like my parents and I went looking for a house, and we found this house right next to campus. It was a stucco house. It was a double house. Like I had like 1 floor on the bottom on one side, and then there was another house on the other side. And after the fact, I discovered that this is the track house. So I'm living in the other half of the track house with the current athletes. And obviously I'm covering track and field at the time. So I get to know Donner and Joe Klim and all those guys. And here I am, like 22 years old. Like, but it was literally line in the sand, right? Like you have to make this decision. Like you're no longer these people if you're going to be with these people.
Yeah.
So you have to make a conscious decision to do that.
That's important. I'm glad you said it that way. I've talked about this on the podcast before. No joke. This is not me just trying to say things to, hit a clip or whatever. I truly think that if you're going to become a grad assistant, you're an athlete on a team, you're going to become a grad assistant. I think it should be against the rules that you can be a grad assistant at the same school that you were like you were just an athlete. Because to your point, I ask everybody, and we've had several that have done it. They were, they were an athlete in spring, and then the fall started and they were a graduate assistant. And I said, how do you go from, I'll say it in the guy's way, hanging with your boys on Friday night playing Xbox, and then on Monday you're coach so-and-so, it's impossible. I mean, literally, as professional as you want to be, that's so hard at the same school. You're talking about here, you
Right.
go to a different school and still you're like, you understood early. Okay, I got to,
Right.
there's a line. You said that. I like that. You knew
Right.
from the get-go. I hate to say the maturity because that means I'm judging the
Right.
other people examples as immaturity, but there's a maturity level of like understanding that from the get-go.
Right. No, there's like I got really into the Coach Prime stuff over the past couple of years. I watch it all the time. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
Coach
love
Prime.
it. Yes,
But there's
same.
one of my favorite clips is that he's at a staff meeting, he's talking to the strength coach and he's like, "Listen, man," he's like, and he's talking about like the strength interns. He's like, "If I come in there and they all buddy and friend and homie, I'm gonna lose my mind." He's like, because that's when you lose respect if you're out drinking with them on the weekend and you're clubbing with them and you're doing all these things. Then you try to be the disciplinarian on Monday. It doesn't work that way. It's a phenomenal clip.
I agree. That's what I said. I am not uh blowing this over. I think it should be illegal. I think you should have
Mhm.
to. And I always like when people go to other places anyway to get different experiences. I think that
Right.
that's secondary, but primary. How in the world? I love Coach Prime's language there. How do you hang out with your homies on Friday and then on
Right.
Monday, hey, you were late. Yeah, bro. Come
Right.
on, we were playing
Yeah,
Xbox
dude.
on Friday. Come on, man. Yeah. I would
Yeah.
do that, by the way, as the athlete. I'm like, come on, man.
Right.
All right, well, I love that. Okay, so you're kind of getting your toes wet in the SID world, which we don't talk
Mhm.
about that enough. God bless SIDs.
Yeah.
Might be the most impossible things. I don't want to say especially for small schools, but certainly in small school settings, they got to cover all the sports. They certainly don't know all the sports. They
Right.
certainly don't have passion for all the sports.
Right.
So when I see some articles written, and I'm obviously reading just the track ones, they're, I'll read them and be like, oh my God, what? And obviously not a track person read
Right.
this at all, but you got to have some grace for these people. So how did you like not covering track because that seems easy, track? Did you
Mhm.
cover a sport that you had no prior knowledge or even maybe liked and had to actually, interview and write an article about that weekend's match or whatnot?
Field hockey.
I
Yeah.
almost said field hockey. I wondered. Yeah.
So Bucknell's field hockey team was pretty good
Mhm.
within the Patriot League. Like Bucknell's a great place. Like
Yeah.
and they're at the top of the Patriot League in most everything. And they were at the time and they are still.
Right.
So field hockey was tough because everything's a whistle. And just never that just never clicked with me. Like I said in high school, I didn't want to wear a skirt, so that was a no. So that's just never been my thing. And then you get here to UNC where it is the thing, right? Like it's like perennial national champion. So field hockey has always been sort of in the periphery of my life somehow.
Same. Yeah.
But it's swimming. Swimming's sort of like track, but
Yeah.
it's like you get it's hard, and I get it, right? Like how a young kid is doing track for the first time, and it's like, what in the world does this all mean? Like that's the way I felt with swimming, like yards versus meters and all these things, and like it's just hard to gauge what a good time is.
I would have thought that would have been
Right.
maybe the most similar because
Yeah.
it's races. We're just swimming instead of running. We have
Right.
relays, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Right.
interesting. Huh.
No, but and I don't know, like, and it's like you have to have kind of awareness too, because it's like all the SIDs, and I've had some pretty good ones actually, but like sometimes you talk to a younger, a new person, it's like, like if they win the triple jump at a meet in Boston, that's a little bit different than if they're 15th in the mile, right? Like, because like it's just like you have to have an awareness of like what's good per
Right.
meet and per person and all these things, right? Like
Right.
certainly like top 10 lists help. Like you can explain to them, like if anyone's on the top 10, that's really good.
Right.
Or if they get, like I have, of course, I have a laminated card for everything, like regional marks and qualifying
Of course
and,
you
and
do.
records and all these things. So like if you operate off of that, you might get pretty close, right? Like if
Yeah.
it's in this range, it's probably pretty good.
Before we move on, I love that you said that about field hockey. So first field hockey experience for me was when I went to Ball State University, and the assistant field hockey coach's office was next to mine. I'd go to support. So I went and I was like, I've never seen this field hockey. Let me go watch. So I'd watch a couple of games, and they'd just be blowing the whistle, and then all right, we turn around and run this way now. We go for this goal, and no one would get knocked out. There's nothing I could evidently see like a foul. Blow the whistle, and so I go and I was like, "Hey, coach, I'm trying to understand this a little better. So, why I see them blowing the whistle and we just turn, we give the ball to the other team. We run this way now.
Right.
What are these fouls or whatnot?" And she's like, "I'm going to lie to you, Mike. Sometimes we don't even know what they're calling." And I was like, "Oh,
right.
crazy sport."
Right.
Complain all you want about track. That's crazy.
Right. I mean, you sort of get there with penalty corners and like you can figure it out, but it's hard.
Yeah, not me. I don't have
And
that.
then
I don't have that Penn State education, Jess. I
right.
couldn't figure it out.
And then with the role I had, I was also running the clock and the scoreboard and everything. So you have to like
Oh,
figure all that
dude.
stuff. You have to be aware of that stuff too. Like
Oh
it
yeah.
was hard. It was
Yeah,
hard.
it is tough. We don't shout out SIDs enough. I assume no SIDs really listen to this podcast, but if you
Right.
know your SID, and you should, by the way, go say thank you. Even if you think they write terribly, or, when I say write terribly, meaning they're not capturing what you would capture, be glad that that's not part of your role. Because in some places that is your role as the track
Right.
coach as well. They're trying their hardest, help educate them. Heck, you might make them a track fan by just reaching out and giving them a helping hand. So have some understanding and empathy, and go say thank you to your SIDs. Okay, Bucknell SID intern. This was I think I heard you say 1-year position.
Yep.
What was next?
So then I went from Bucknell thinking that I was a lifetime SID. I took a job at East Tennessee State in Johnson City.
Yeah.
So I was able to cover women's basketball. So in the SID world, I figured if I could get a basketball under my belt, like I would have some opportunities. So I went there. I had a handful of sports. I don't think I had track at first, but then I ended up begging to switch over because Dave Walker was there at the time. Michelle Byrne was there at the time. So it was a great staff, certainly an entertaining staff. So I liked going to chat with them about things. And so yeah, I was there for a year as well. Then I actually I had accepted a job to be the SID for Penn Relays in Philadelphia. So that was the next step, or that was one of the responsibilities within the job. There's a couple other sports, and I think. And sorry if I'm jumping you here, but
You're good. Yeah, you're good.
So I accepted a job there. I think it was the next day that Joe Klim, who was my buddy from Bucknell, calls me and he's like, "Pack your bags. You're moving to Happy Valley." I was like, "No, Joe, Philadelphia." And he's like, "No, they're combining the programs here. Beth has a job. She's going to offer it to you as yours if you want it." And I'm like, I got an apartment, I was already pocket committed to go to Penn. It was within 48, 72 hours that this all happened. So I talked to Beth. I can't remember if I can't remember if I went on an interview before or after this, but eventually I called the guy. His name was Mike as well, at Penn, and was like, "Listen, I'm sorry." And he's like, "I'm never going to fault someone for going to their alma mater." And I've seen him at every Penn relay since. Great guy.
Wow.
So I didn't burn a bridge there, and I'm no longer in that industry, but the guy's still very, very nice to me.
Yeah, it's amazing because I was wondering as you were, going from Bucknell to East Tennessee State, and then you talk about SID for Pitt, because I was like, well, how do we get back to track in this role? And so when you said SID at Penn Relays and others, it's like, oh, okay, obviously that's a big track. So they combined the programs at Penn State. And you said, Joe said that, hey, Beth's she's going to hire, she's got a position for you. Was this a coaching position?
No, it was the ops position. So when Coach Groves retired and they combined the programs, and they'd combined a couple months earlier. So this wasn't all an instant thing.
Right.
But he called and said, there's this new position that she has. And I think Joe was the one who actually suggested me for it. Or Dana, maybe, I can't remember. Dana, who was the throws coach at the time. So he called me and was like, "Listen, I think you just accepted this other job, but you should probably open your calendar here because you're going to get a phone call." So yeah, it was weird.
So when you were an undergrad there, did Penn State have a director of ops?
No, it was still split when I was in school. So it was Beth plus a sprints coach plus Dana, who was a throws coach for a long time. And then it was Coach Groves, and his staff. And there was honestly very little crossover when I was in school.
What was your, and maybe from your, as you're there for a while and you had history and understanding of Beth, and what was your understanding of the role and what was her idea of the role? And those two might have meshed, obviously, but I'm trying to think you're creating kind of, because this is what you said, I think you said freshman year of high school was 2000. Is that what you said? I'm trying to get a time.
No, I graduated high school in 2000. I graduated from Penn State in 04. So this is summer of 06, probably.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I got here at summer of 06. That helps me with time frames. Okay. So I'm thinking to myself in '06. So I just finished up my career of coaching college track and field for 10 years. So I knew there were a couple of we had
Yeah.
more, in my understanding, we had more like managers than I would call
Yeah.
director of ops. So this is still, director of ops is still like what is that kind of role? Like it's not, everybody knows what the sprint coach role
Mhm.
is. Everybody knows what the cross country distance coach role is. Director of ops is still kind of this new things. What was the understanding of what this role was supposed to be?
So like Beth presented it as not like, even at the time, like she's just like, come do this for me for a year or two, and then you can go back to the SID stuff. Like no big deal.
So
like,
we still thought you were
yeah,
going
like
to be an SID.
at the time, like this was not a lifetime commitment, right? Like, and the folks that she was modeling off of were Mike Riley at Stanford, who I believe was the original director of ops.
Okay.
And then Francesca Green at Arizona. And I don't know that was her title at the time, but I think Beth had been on a couple of teams with her internationally, and Francesca was the manager. So like that was sort of Beth's vision for the position, was like or this is not necessarily vision for the position, but like this is who you need to aspire to be.
Right,
Like
right.
this is what I want. And it was the first couple of years, like I was thinking about this earlier, like I don't even know what I was doing, like there, because it wasn't really defined, right? Like there was like,
that's what I was wondering. Yeah.
And like Beth that summer had hired a bunch of new people because the programs had combined. So I was hired, John Gondak was hired, and then Fritz Spence was hired that summer. So there was, and then it was a guy named Drew Hardick who was coaching the men's jumps, Dana Wenger, and Chris Johnson was the staff.
Right.
So, I mean, looking back on it, we were all like, I think everyone, like Beth was probably younger than me at the time. Like, and then like the rest of us, like I was like 23, right? Like, so it was like looking back on it, it was like crazy how young we are, and how young we were, and that we're all like still standing. But Gondak was I don't want to say like he's a phenomenal coach, but like he also has an administrative mind too. So he was doing like all the travel, all the budget, like that stuff, because he just was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm not letting it go. So like with me, it was just like we were slowly kind of adding things as we went.
And that's a good key, because that's what I was thinking of, because I would think it still happens today, like when a school opens up and has a director of ops for the first time. But certainly back then, I could see exactly what you described there with John. I could see both sides, the complete opposite. So I could see the coaches who say, no, I understand you're here maybe to try to do that stuff, and maybe I'll let you help me with it. But no, I'm the scheduler, or I'm
gonna do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can see the 100%, 100 degrees opposite of that, of, oh, thank God, Jess, you're going to do it
100%.
all, and I will see you at the track if you need me, type of thing.
Right.
So I can see both, and really the happy middle is where it should be, but that's what I was wondering when you're developing this. Yeah.
And that's kind of like one of, not grievances, but like one of my pet peeves in this whole like networking process is like, and I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but like I get calls every summer, like, who should I hire? I got an ops position. Who should I hire? And it's like, well, you're not getting me. Right. Like, so like there is like, regardless of who you get, you're going to have to teach them a little something. Like, it's not like this magician that comes in and solves all your problems. There's not
this big pool of people like there are in coaches, right? We have a lot of coaches. You need a sprint coach, you can go hire a sprint coach. I need to hire a director of ops. We're probably starting from scratch here.
Right. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make. And I think that's why a lot of people don't last in the role, because it's like they just give them the stuff that they don't want to do. Like, you can resolve my P card, like stuff like that. So like you have to like you have to create the role in such a way that like it's something that person is going to be excited about.
Right.
But at the same time, they also need to realize like this is not necessarily your pathway directly into coaching either.
So like how like, do you see that? Yeah.
This is the role.
Right.
And you're not to be out at hurdle practice. But like, so it's hard. And I assume it was really hard for Beth at the time. Like, we just hired an ops guy this summer, and it was hard for me. I mean, not even just like letting stuff go, which was really hard for me, but but just like, okay, dude, like here's the role, here's what I need you to do. And like, but you have to like, and my guys here are really good at this, like, but like, we're not like battling for help. You know what I mean? So it's like, this is what he's going to do. like it's not your right to just dump what you don't want to do on him, right?
So a lot of the coaches that we have on, when they get their first role, or a lot of times when they get their first head coaching role, I like to ask the question of like, so who was your, remember back in the day, I think it was T-Mobile had the 5 friends, on your
Mhm.
phone, you hit like, who were your auto dials of like, man, hey man, first time I'm a head coach, how did you do X? Because I'm stuck. And in today's world, we
Mhm.
have that with operations type people. It's funny.
Yeah.
I had a high school coach call me and said, "Hey, I think I want to coach college, but I like more of the administrative side." And I was like, "Dude, there's a professionalism with director of
Mhm.
ops." And I was like, "Hey, call these people. Call Jess,
Yep.
call Andrea, call Cody. Those are like
Yep.
my top 3. Like,
Yep.
call them, ask them questions, and they'll give you the real, and you'll find out if you really do want to do this
Right.
or not." Right? Back then, there was no one to call.
No.
Like you guys were figuring this out, not you going, "Hey, let me call Cody. Hey, Cody. So,
Yeah.
all right, I got this role over here. What are your responsibilities? Okay, yep, I see that here. How did you tackle this? Okay, X, Y, and Z." You were literally making it up as you go
Mhm.
along. So, how did you guys find your rhythm, find your cadence?
It took a while. I was there for 8 years. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but like I think the chief responsibility to start was the meets, the indoor meets.
Okay.
So that was dealing with officials, that was dealing with seating, that was dealing with all that stuff,
Right.
right? And that was certainly a work in progress because like I was 23 years old and had never run a meet before.
Right.
So that was one of the big responsibilities. In addition to that, I was also at the time doing a lot of the SID stuff too,
I
because that
wondered.
was my
Yep.
background. So it was like in a place like Penn State, for good or for bad, like they would just assign a student and that's what you get. So it's like, well, I'm on the trip, and at the time you didn't travel in SID, right? Like, so it's like I'm there, like I can take a picture, I can do a quick interview, I can do those
Right.
things. And so I was writing all the press releases at the time too. And I think I was the first track person to have Twitter. And at the time, like I
Wow.
didn't depends, like we were hosting the Big Ten meet one year, and the department, the SID department was like, "Hey, listen, do you want to sign up for this thing?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever. Like we're hosting a championship, it'll be great." And like it was like the handle was at Jess Riden. No, like it wasn't even at Penn State Track and Field. Like we didn't change that for years. Like it was just like that was Penn State Track and Field was Jess Riden.
Wow.
Yeah, because none of us had any idea,
Right,
right?
right, right. So first of all, as a guy who, spends his whole life on Twitter, I love hearing of Twitter pioneers. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I love that you just right,
I
not
think
Penn
this
State.
was
That's so funny.
maybe indoor '09 or something in that range.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man, that's funny. I love that.
No, but in addition to that stuff, like I was just sort of like I don't like team communication is the other thing I would say was one of my big things, like
Okay.
getting the emails out with the schedules, and like we would create these like team calendars and you hand them out every month, and
Right.
just disseminating information like itineraries and shuttle schedules and all that stuff was what I was dealing with at the time. Yeah, but like it got the role expanded throughout the years, right? Like
You spent 8 years there. Was there ever, because when you first got there, you Beth's like, hey, do it for a year or two.
yeah.
You'll be a better SID somewhere, with this experience. When did it, and maybe it didn't until maybe the next job, I don't know, but throughout these
Mhm.
8 years, did it ever click of like, okay, I'm no longer SID. I'm a director of ops. This is my career path.
Yeah, so I think at some point, like I sort of realized that like my passion in this wasn't college athletics, that it was track and field, right? Like so
Mm,
I think that I had to like at some point make a decision to figure out the best way, like I'm going to continue to make myself or to keep myself involved in this and make myself relevant in this industry, because this is where I want to stay.
mm,
So I have to figure out how to create something for myself to make
right,
sure like that this is a sustaining situation,
right, right.
right? And I think that's why I left Penn State in the end, right? Because it's like you're at your alma mater, like you're comfortable in the situation, and it's like,
Mhm,
what am I going to do? Like I could probably sit here and do the same thing for the next 30 years, and that would be fine. Like I'm
right,
20 minutes from home, that would be great.
right.
But sometimes you got to take a shot on something and figure out if this is actually going to work, right?
Okay, before you go to the next spot, talk because I love let's explore a little bit of the history as we're going through your history of the director of ops type position
Mhm.
in those 8 years. when you finally were able to kind of see past what was going on a daily basis with Penn State track and field, because that's, you're immersed and you're figuring out this role and you're figuring out Beth as a boss, not as a coach athlete relationship. It's a different relationship. So you're working on all that. Do you have an understanding of where the role of director of ops was nationally? Did you, again, your head may have been so buried into just Penn State track, so you couldn't, I know you do now, but I wondered back then, where in those 8 years did the director of ops role go collegiately, nationally? Did you see them popping up here and there? Was it still like, yeah, it was me and like 2 other people type of thing?
No, I think people started adding positions for sure. And like somewhere probably a couple years in, like I started, and this is where I kind of thought that like this could be a sustainable thing. Like I said, like that people started recognizing what I was doing. Like, and it was mostly because of the indoor meets. So I had those connections where it's like, talk to Jess to get this entry changed or whatever. Like, so I had FaceTime with these people and like people like on occasion would like say, like, I wish I could hire you if I had the money, like stuff like that. Like, so like, that's when personally I was like, shoot, like I can make this into something if I position myself to do it.
Did you and/or Beth get calls on, hey, so we're going to add a role? Can you guys tell us how, so what does she do? Jess, what do you do? I know I see the meets thing. Like, did you start, now I think about that as like the consultant side of helping grow this role.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like, I would get calls from like other coaches, like, hey, I got an athlete on the team who I think could be really good at this. Are you willing to talk to him? Stuff like that. Like, and that started pretty early. I don't know what I said to them at the time. I probably wasn't very good at it, but, yeah. So like it started to kind of catch wind a little bit. And I remember like a couple coaches saying to me, like, I wish I had a Jess, like I like stuff like that. Like, so it did like, and people started getting additional positions and probably pretty low paying at the time. But people were getting in the door. Right.
Yeah. We don't pay coaches enough. I can't imagine overall what we're paying director of ops for sure. Okay. 8 years at Penn State, you decide, and I can feel what you're saying there about, it's my alma mater. It's comfortable. She was my coach, for crying out loud. How do I expand? How do I continue to grow? So what did you choose to do for the next step to grow?
So I obviously, like, with being with Beth, you get to meet a lot of people, right? And like, and like you were saying, like, who did you call at the time? Like, I didn't have really any friends at the time because there was like, as a young person in the sport, it's sort of hard to meet people like you. So like, I was just with Beth, right? Like I met people through Beth, like I met people through Chris, like that's like, I met people through Gondak, like that's kind of how you kind of network, is just through the people you're already with. And like, that's what, like, I tell our younger assistants sometimes, I'm like, you're better off hanging with us than you are your buddies. Right. Like, because like, that's how you meet the person who's going to hire you for your next job.
Right.
So that's back to the networking conversation. But like, so being with Beth and being able to meet the folks that she was friends with and acquainted with, I got to know Greg Metcalf pretty well. And ironically, or not ironically, but TJ Crater was with us at Penn State. And TJ's one of my best buddies. Like, I'm not a great first impression person, and I don't warm up very quickly either. But for whatever reason, like, I drew the straw to pick TJ up on his interview at Penn State, and we were instant friends. From the moment I met him, we were buddies.
Well, okay, let's explore that a little bit. Because first of all, I know TJ really well, love him. Jess, I've known you for a long time, love you. I don't know that I would, externally here, I don't know that I would agree with you when you say you're not a great first meet. You're professional. There was nothing where I was like, oh, she's rude, or, she's dumb. There's like, professional. You're a good person in our sport. That was awesome. What do you think with TJ? So why TJ? Because, a great dude, but I describe you as a great person,
26, 28-year-old Jess was a little squirrely, right?
Okay,
like
sure.
little anxious, little tentative. I'm still pretty squirrely, but I hide it a little better these days. But I don't know what it was. Like, I picked him up, we went and got dinner, and we were buddies from that moment on. Cool. Right. Good. So then when we hired him, it was like, we were just, and I was really good friends with Dana too, who like, And funny story, like I think the first time I heard your name, we were in Champaign for the Big Ten one year, and Dana had forgotten like hammer wires or something.
Yes.
And she calls and she's like, Mike, do you think you can ship them? And you're like, Dana, we're in Champaign.
I do remember that. It's like, ship them. I'm like, well, I mean, I can, I guess, but you're probably going to be here before they get there.
Right.
I'll deliver them to you for crying out loud.
Right.
Yeah, you
Right.
guys came and visited the factory. I remember
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
Because that's when I found out Beth's husband, Jim, and our CEO grew up together downstate Illinois.
Yeah.
Jim comes over and goes, hey, is Haji around? And I was like, who calls him? That, you know, it's like my
Right.
first year or two here. And so I go up to, I was like, Mr. Hodge. I was like,
Right.
there's a guy from Penn State. He
Right.
acts like he knows you. And then,
Jim's that guy. Like
Yeah,
Jim always knows like some, like he's got
yeah.
some weird connection. Like
and then
wherever
they
you
saw
go.
each other. They were huggers. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
You guys know each other. Then I found out they grew up together in the same area, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Pole vaulters. So that should say it all.
Right.
Right there. I've got us off track. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
TJ. No, it was my fault.
No,
TJ, Washington. Where are we at? Yeah.
Yeah. No. So TJ leaves to go to Washington because they had a throws opening like fall of 12, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
So TJ's from the state of Washington.
Right.
Like they just had a kid. She was actually born on my birthday. We're exactly 29 years apart.
Nice.
So so that was a connector too. But so TJ and his family moved to Washington. And then Greg gets an ops position added that summer, I think. Okay. So I applied for that. And like I said, it was one of those things like either I'm going to do this now or I'm not going to do it at all. Like, and in this business, like something I've learned for me is like, you got to be comfortable with the people you're working with. Right. So I already knew Greg pretty well.
Good dude.
So it was like, I sort of know what I'm getting into here. Right. So it wasn't just like cold call. Like I could, so and I knew JD too, but I go on an interview there. I missed my connection. I missed the entire interview. So my interview consists of me getting there. JD and I went out for a beer on like a Friday night. Next morning, I go to meet with Greg in the office. Greg's TV isn't working. I fix Greg's TV. Then I meet with the assistant AD for like 5 minutes, and he's like, "Hey, I got to go. I got to go meet the football officials." And then I go to the football game and I sit with Greg's parents. That was my interview.
I think the fixing the TV is what sealed it.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, if she could do this, she could do it.
100%. So and
now,
I'd gone on a couple other interviews that year. Just like I was sort of ready to go.
For same roles?
The role I interviewed at LSU when Andrea got the job, actually. That was one. And then I actually
coming from Akron.
Yeah. And then I interviewed at the NCAA for Jeff Malinsky's job.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Man. Oh, wow.
And I got neither, so it's fine.
It all works out, right? It all works out.
It all worked out in the end.
So now, after 8 years at Penn State, now you're at Washington. Now it's a different, it may be the same role. You'll tell us maybe what some changes happened that occurred, but now you're not going in trying to figure out what is the role. Now you actually define the role. In fact, you got more experience at this than Greg does, right? Because he's never had one before. I'm assuming
right
before.
No.
And so now you're like, hey, this is what I did at Penn State. Doesn't necessarily mean it's what you want me to do here, but here are the skill sets and how we can help, things like that. So because that's a different, now you're experienced. That's a different pathway. How did that experience go?
For sure. And the reason I think the main reason I went to Washington in the first place was the meets, right? Sure. Because like I said, like there was something in my brain at some point clicked at Penn State where it was like, I need to figure out how to put my face in front of as many people as possible if I'm going to advance in this thing. Because when you're a director of ops, like you don't have data. Like there's not, like if you need to hire a sprints coach, you look at the NCAA meeting. It's like, okay, this guy has this many people. Is he the head coach? I'll call him. There's no data for us. Right. So it's like how do I impress people, or how do I show people that I know what I'm doing when I literally have no metric to show that, right? And I think like one of those times was one of my last Big Ten meets. I think it was Lonnie's first year at Purdue. Like he grabbed me at some point and he's like, listen, he's like, I know you don't think this, but people see how hard you're working and they notice. And like, it's one of those things where it's like, you don't know how much you needed that until they said it,
Sure.
and I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
But it was during those times that it's like, and I've said this 6 times already, like I can make this something if I position myself right,
Mhm.
So when I went to Washington and did my fake interview, or my after the fact interview, and JD and I are talking, and he's just like, like your network will expand threefold in the first meet here. He's like, you will meet everybody. He's like, so if nothing else, this is going to be worth it for you,
Mm.
because you'll know everybody and you'll know them immediately. Right. So I go from dealing with like, I don't even know who at Penn State, like Pittsburgh, like great programs, but like
Right.
Bucknell and Pittsburgh and Robert Morris. Right. And then I go to dealing with like Alberto Salazar. Right. Like, so it's quite a shift. And in my first meet there, I think I resigned 3 times with Greg, but like, it's madness. Like, so it's just,
Oh, yeah.
it's just funny what you like, how good you think you are at something. Like when I left Stanford, I was like, like I left Penn State and I was like, I'm really good at this. I get to Washington and I'm like, resigned 3 times my first meet, and I get to Stanford and I'm like, I have never been worse, because you just have more of a, like, you have more of a kind of awareness and a wherewithal to know like
Yeah.
what's going wrong
Right.
when you're young, you like have no bar.
It's a good
Like, it's
point.
just like, I think that was good,
Yeah, it's a good point.
like,
How many years at Washington first?
about 3.
So, do you, in those 3 years, and maybe it was year one, maybe in the first meet when you resigned, maybe the second time you resigned at the first meet, did you still think, because this is still in its infancy, because today in 2024, by the way, while we certainly have more DOs out there, it's still not every staff. So this isn't like,
Sure.
sprint coaches. There's a sprint coach for every staff, essentially. This is still like, we're barely out of its infancy in my mind, kind of, again, outside looking in. You're really still in the infancy of the profession back then. Is there any thought, are you established of like, okay, this is my career, it is going to move forward in this? Or is there still like, yeah, I may go do something else, whether that's go back to SID, maybe it's become an administrator in the collegiate setting, or is it like, no, this is the path?
No, I think by that time it was like, this is what I'm doing. So
Okay.
I just like the goal might be a moving target, but like this is what I'm supposed to do.
Okay, so now at Washington, I love that you said you resigned 3 times in the first meet, because I've always heard of the University of Washington indoor meets and I've seen pictures. And then the first time I went, and it's the very definition of controlled chaos is the best way, my observation to of those meets. I remember opening the door and a kid runs by, like there was lane 5. Like
Yeah.
you know exactly what door I walked in. Yeah.
Yep.
And I was just like,
And the
holy.
usher's standing right there and he screams track. Yeah, that guy
I don't
screams all day.
I don't think that dude said anything to me, because I was ready to walk around the track. He didn't say
No,
nothing, but
there's a guy that's every time someone comes past, he screams track. It's the same dude. He's a great guy.
amazing.
I don't know
So
how he has a voice at the end of the indoor season.
what did you can you think of something you contributed? Like if we go to the University of Washington indoor meet now today, this year, and long jump is over here now. It used to go this way, but you were like, hey, it makes more sense, guys, if we do this, or hey, we should put a guy at that door that yells track. Was there something, you're again, with that leader title I always have with you, that means creativity comes into it. You improve things. So I have to imagine, and I could be wrong. You could tell me like, no, Mike, you know what I did? I helped seeding. I don't know.
Right.
Was there something that you added that we can see today? It's like, oh my gosh, that was genius. Why didn't we ever do it that way?
Right. No, I think I think the thing with the meets is just like customer service, right? And JD was dealing with the meets before, and certainly was helping me when I was doing it. But it's just like you got to return emails. You got to be like, you got to get the information out there. You got to be willing to work with people. Like you got to and you got to be able to say no too. But it's sort of like logistically, like they have a great group of officials. There's these 2 guys, Jeff and Andy Newing, who are their chief officials. Their dad was the chief official, who's since passed away. But like, they're just great guys in the state of Washington. They have this whole herd of people who love the sport, love helping kids. Like they do everything from like elementary school meets all the way up through the Pac-12, right? Like they're just dedicated people. So like, before I got there, like, I think it was just like, they're so nice and everybody knew them so well. Like things were just happening like someone would go to the clerk and make a change that no one else was unaware, that everyone else was unaware of, right? Like, so it was just like so casual. So like that was
Right.
one initially, like I'm like, and maybe I was like overconfident or just a jerk at the time, I don't know, but like I'm like, no, like you do nothing without talking to me first, nothing.
Right.
So like it made that made it run a little bit smoother, but it's also hard. Like I understand why it was happening. It's so hard to manage. Like it's like, because there's just people running all over the place and literally and just, so I would say that was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
and I was also the only one on the ground too. Like JD was obviously still a coach, so like JD was trying to like make changes in the mile and also tell a kid when to go warm up. Like I wasn't doing that, right? Like so
Yeah.
like I would say in addition to that, like it was just more of like a more focused than what we were able to, what they were able to do before, and that wasn't
Right.
anybody's fault, right? Like that was just out of need, out of necessity.
That makes sense. So before we go to Stanford, I'd be remiss if I didn't get your opinion. This has nothing to do with director of ops, just because you were there at University of Washington. You know, me personally, and certainly us here at Gill, we're big proponents of electronic starting devices instead of
Mhm.
traditional starting pistols. And I was amazed. You know, we think we finally got it solved. Maybe there still needs some tweaks with our newest one, the Halo. But we've been trying to solve this issue because of starting blanks and again, guns on campus, things like that. When my first University of Washington indoor meet, I go there and you guys are using electronic
Mhm.
start. You're using Finish
Yeah.
Links' version, which they do a great job. I was just blown away. It literally gave me like confidence of like, oh, this can happen because these guys are running huge meets with a billion
Mhm.
of heats.
Right.
And it's happening flawlessly. No one's complaining.
Right.
No one says I didn't hear. No one says it's a different sound, etc. I'm just curious what your opinion might be on electronic starting devices versus traditional. And by the way, this is no setup. She's not going to tell me unless she believes it that it's true. She has no idea that I was going to ask this. This is not a plug for electronic starting devices. I'm just curious as someone who had experience with it. That's all.
Yeah, no, I think like our two chief officials, like the one of them was like a former engineer at Boeing. So like they were always into the tech stuff. Like they would like, this is the new device. You want to try this? Like they were always into doing that. And like they have this whole trailer of toys, right? Like so like no, and I don't even remember when that switch occurred,
Yeah.
but like I like it indoors for sure.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I mean
Agreed.
like
Mhm.
yeah. So it's and yeah, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
indoors I think it works. Outdoors is obviously a little different because of like
Yeah,
the different sounds and things, but
it's tougher. Wind is the biggest issue.
yeah.
Wind and space. You know how you know like if you think about
Right.
the 400-meter stagger, or God bless if you're doing a 4x2, the stagger,
Mhm.
you got to just cover more ground with that sound. I'm super interested in 2025. Ohio has mandated it for their district regionals and state meet for high school. So there is no option. You have to use.
Right.
Not only do you have to use an electronic starting device, it has to be the tone, not the gun sound, which I'm also
Yeah.
a proponent of. I will never get into conversations about your politics and Second
Mhm.
Amendment and all that crap. I don't know. I don't care, to be real honest with you. But you just can't tell me that it's smart to bring a gun and gun sound onto campuses in
Yeah.
today's world. Just
I forget where we had that issue at the Pac. It might have been Cal in the Pac-12 that there was an issue with having the actual gun.
oh, dude, we hear all the stories, because being in the forefront with the equipment, officials who got stopped on campus because they're carrying around a holster and a gun, and they should, by the way, because safer than sorry, on that case. There are high school areas in California that can't have meets at night because of the gun sound, because of the
Right.
area they're in, things like that. It just, I don't know. To me, it just doesn't make sense. And I was at Big 12 when we're recording this is right after I told you after conferences. So I was at Big 12 down in Waco. And, one of the things I hear, and I'll move on from this electronic thing right after this, I promise, guys. I hear about with the tone specifically, it's like, oh, well, the athletes aren't used to it. They're used to gun
Mhm.
sounds, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, I have been to a billion practices. In fact, at Big 12 championships, the sprinters and hurdlers were on the far side warming up for their races. And a coach, I don't know who it was, doesn't matter who it was using a whistle to start them out of the blocks. And I was
Or
like,
the clapper.
oh my God, the blocks, the clap. Oh,
Yeah.
how about go? Plenty of
Yeah.
coaches. I guarantee you I almost said Big Tens, at ACCs,
Yeah.
someone was warming their kids up going, all right, ready, set, go,
Yep.
and you don't think they can handle a tone?
Yeah. For sure.
You can't
For
argue.
sure.
Anyway, okay. Sorry. I was just curious because you're at
Oh,
Washington. It
that's
just
good.
always amazed me. People in the forefront in University of Washington, specifically for indoor, has been at the forefront for that. And I
Yeah.
love them for that. Okay. Where do we go next? You kind of already gave us a hint, and why?
So this is sort of a funny story. So like we just hosted the regional cross country meet in Seattle. We won the men. This is fall of 15, I guess. We make the cross country meet. Like I had just like oftentimes, like if you've ever been to campus in Seattle, there's about 16 Starbucks within like 100 meters. So like oftentimes one of us would go get Starbucks or whatever and come back to practice. And so I went to the bank. I went to Starbucks. I got $6,000 cash for the trip that weekend. We were leaving for NCAA cross country the next morning.
Where was that at?
This is in Seattle.
No, I'm sorry. Where was Nationals at?
Louisville, I think.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious where you were. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to Louisville the next morning. I bring the coffee into the Dempsey. I walk back up. Windows are knocked out of my car. So they took my purse, they took my wallet, that whole thing. They did not get the $6,000 that was underneath my seat. So there was a silver lining there. But
first of all, it sucks alone. I don't want to say thank goodness because I wish it didn't. I had that happen to me when I was out in California, out by Stanford, actually,
right?
When I went to visit them. But they have no idea how close they were to what I assume 100%. Is a jackpot for a burglary like that. I mean, $6,000.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
My goodness.
So like, but we're leaving the next morning. So like, I know the airport is going to be a pain in the butt for me because I have nothing. I have nothing. So like Greg found like this plastic UW, like I don't even know what it was, tablecloth or something. So we tape up my windows. I drive home. Like I pack, like I guess I deal with this when I get home. Thankfully, like I lived in an apartment that had a garage underneath.
Yeah,
so it wasn't like completely, it was bad timing. So I'm not having a very good series of days, right? So the next morning we're in SeaTac. Milt calls Greg and is like, hey, my director of ops just took a job on campus. I want to call Jess.
Oh, on campus. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like he called that next morning, where I'm probably in security trying to get through without an ID. And Greg said something to me and he's like, listen, like Milt's going to call you. He's got a job open.
Why you? I don't mean that derogatory. I'm just like, he called and said, I want to hire Jess.
Yeah. Cause I'd known Milt for a long time. Like Milt was at all our meets at he was at Georgetown when I was running meets at Penn State.
Right.
Obviously he was at Stanford when I was running meets at Washington.
Got it.
And obviously the one of the big sells or one of the big responsibilities of the job at Stanford is the meets. Yeah. So that
makes sense. I figured there had to be some connection there. I assumed the Stanford Seattle forgot about Georgetown and obviously Penn State. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, but it also goes back to like one of the things I think about all the time, and I've said in a few of my presentations is like you never know who you're going to impress, right? Like so you got to be on all the time because like someone's going to have a job eventually. And it's like my dad used to say, there's somebody always watching, but like my dad probably meant that like, don't do anything stupid because someone's going to tell on you, but like it's true, right? Like, so like you always got to put yourself in position to impress people. Like
and with that, and by, Georgetown's a very nice program here, but they're not in the Power Five. Also, don't judge where someone is today. You could have easily like, man, I'm at Penn State, Milt, you're at Georgetown. I know you guys got some fast runners, but you ain't in the Big Ten. Settle down. Milt becomes the head coach at Stanford. So I love that. You never know who's watching, and don't judge someone based on where they are today because tomorrow's coming. So yeah, love that. Great lesson. Love that.
And don't miss the opportunity to impress somebody, right? Yeah. So he calls, we have a conversation. We're supposed to meet in Louisville a couple times. It didn't work out. So then I go on an interview shortly after Thanksgiving, I think. And then it's just sort of, because honestly, like I was pretty happy at Washington. I liked Seattle. I liked what I was doing. And it was like, you know what, he's probably going to call me and offer me less than I'm making for I was going to ask for an environment that requires double, right? Like, so like, I thought it was going to be a pretty easy no.
Right.
And then it wasn't. And then it's, like I said, like it's just, my goal was to just be constantly expanding my network. Right. Like, so like the big thing for me was like, how am I not going to run Peyton Jordan in an Olympic year? Right. This is 2016. If this is really what I want to do and this is where I want to position myself, like this is an opportunity I just can't miss, you know? So and it was like, I met with Milt and we had a lot of, the process took way longer than it should because I was dragging my feet big time because I did really like Seattle and I really did like working for Greg, right?
Yeah,
Like, and it's, and Greg's a hard person to leave sometimes.
sure.
Sometimes you want to, but like most of the time.
I love Greg. Yeah, it's interesting. I know we're talking about, operational type roles here, but it's always interesting to me, like when a coach says, and not many say it, I think anymore. I still hear it occasionally where they'll say, I'm a great recruiter, no matter where I'm at. Like if I was at Stanford, we'd win nationals because look how well I did at whatever's, school. And I'm like, oh, you're forgetting that every school is different. Every school is there's drawbacks and positivities. Even I know a lot of people, we talk a lot about Oregon and I love Oregon. They make great decisions in track equipment. So I love those guys. Even Oregon has issues. It's not just carte blanche. Anybody can get in and you got a billion scholarships. We all have our things. Stanford is one that's always been interesting to me because, high academic school. So that's a positive in a lot of cases. That can also be a negative as far as their super high expectations. For jobs, I'm always amazed because that area, I mean, you hit the nail on the head about like, it's going to be easy. He's going to offer me less. Even if you offer me the same, I can't afford it. I can't commute an hour and a half every day. That's minimum, right? How did you find living in that area, working for Stanford? A lot of positives. It's beautiful. Maybe I was just talking to Milt or someone when I went to visit it. I was blown away by how many bicycles. Like it's a bicycle school, bro.
You go on campus, you'll get taken out.
I called my wife and I was like, it's like mosquitoes. I was like, you gotta be on the lookout. They're everywhere. How was that experience? Because that's a cool. At the end of the day, it's a cool place to be.
For sure. And I did it coming from Seattle, right? Like, so like I go from State College, which is where I grew up. Like it's like farm and all of a sudden 40,000 people. Like that's what I'm used to.
Right.
And then Seattle's a major city. Then you go to the Bay Area and it's like the Bay Area is, and we had this issue with everyone not issue, but like we had this conversation with everyone we hired there. It's like, dude, listen, like, I know you see the number, but that's not the number when you get here, like, and I can't describe that to you I can't, there's nothing I can say to you that will make you realize it until you get here, like, and just, I really love Stanford. I love being there. I love the kids we coached. I loved our program. Like, but it's hard. Like Stanford is a great experience for the student athletes because they stay on campus for 4 years. Like they never come off. Yeah. So like I lived in Sunnyvale, which is the next town over from Cupertino. So down by Apple, a little closer to San Jose. Like I was paying like $2,300 for a 1-bedroom. And it was probably 8 miles. It would take me 45 to 50 minutes in the morning. So like everything in the Bay Area is just hard. Like going to the grocery store is hard. Like it's just takes effort. Like nothing is easy, And like you said, like there are certainly massive positives, like the sun and the weather and like there's lots of things to do, but like major airport, like there's it's a great place to be, but there's certainly bits of strife. Let's say.
For sure. And to your point, Seattle, you love Seattle, but some people don't like big city. I've gone my whole professional career living in college towns, from Muncie, Indiana, Starkville, Mississippi, even here in Champaign. And I love college towns. If you took all the things I love here about Champaign, Urbana, the University of Illinois, and put it in Chicago, which I lived in Chicago, I wouldn't like it. A big city is different than a college town. Here, you're at a college that's in a big town for both Seattle and Palo Alto, et cetera. So there's. And by the way, some people would hate living in a Midwest college town type as well, and they can't not live in a Seattle, et cetera. In the interest of time, because I want to have a greater discussion. Two things. One question that came up to mind is you don't seem to have a problem. You're from Pennsylvania, but here we are living in Tennessee and Seattle and California. And we're going to learn, we know you're in North Carolina. You're kind of a journeyman in that respect. no issues, connected to back home, and I really want to get back
No.
home. Yeah.
No, I mean, there's a part of me that thinks sometime like eventually I'll want to go back home,
Yeah.
but like I never like I said, I grew up 20 minutes away from State College and I went home maybe 4 times.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
wow.
it's like it's just not like it's not that I didn't want to be home.
Yeah,
Like
right,
it
right,
was
right.
like
Yeah.
I'm gonna bet on me and
Yeah.
taking chances on these things.
That's
You
cool.
know,
I love that.
and
It's just a good experience. Some people, the drawback home is huge, and other people, it's like, yeah, man, I got a plane ticket. I can get home anytime I want to spend time with my parents
right,
or whatever.
for
So
sure.
yeah, just always curious the difference there. And two, so give us some highlights from your time at Stanford, and then why'd you go to North Carolina? It's some of these questions I'm like, what's a dumb question? We know why, but I don't want to assume. So
Yeah.
give us some highlights of Stanford, and how'd you end up at North Carolina?
I mean, Stanford was, it's a different experience. It's like I said, it's hard. But it's like, we love the kids we coached. We love the experience there, but it's hard all the time. And you watch the environment there. You just watch people crumble due to what's around them. Right. Because it's so high pressure.
Yeah.
And they have this whole thing at Stanford with the students. It's called the duck. So like you see the duck floating along calm and placid sea, but you don't see his feet below him. It's hard for those kids. And obviously they can handle it. The academic aspect, they can handle the athletic aspect. It's just like that peripheral pressure all the time. That's really, really hard. So like if one of my nieces or nephew got into Stanford, I'd certainly have a hard time telling them not to go there.
Sure.
Like I'd have a hard time telling anybody not to go there. But when you're on the inside, you just see it kind of grind at people a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's pretty hard.
Yeah, I remember. I'm gonna say I read a study. I did not read the study. I read the synopsis of the story, talking about high academic people. This is all academics, not necessarily athletics here. But I am kind of saying this out loud for the first time. Kind of curious if maybe the same doesn't happen in athletics as well, but for the academic side, these kids go from, they're ultra number ones at their schools, and then they go to a Stanford. Heck, North Carolina's no shabbiness for academics, as we talked about, but Ivy League, et cetera. And now they are the 100th, maybe the 1,000th smartest person, and that the suicide rate actually for these type of individuals is a lot higher because of that, because people can't transition from being number one to being number 100 mentally. And yeah, it's just interesting.
Right.
And I kind of just, was thinking out loud, it's like, because
Right.
what's the difference in athletics in regards to, you're the
No,
state
100%.
champion, school record holder, and you go to North Carolina. It's like, yeah, you don't even make our 4x18. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you got to adjust to that. So I don't know. That's just,
and I think that's true everywhere. Like, and I remember like Milt was asked to speak at like one of our coaches meetings or something at Stanford one time. And he talked a lot about that everybody here is the best from where they came from, like bar none. Now I'm going to try and convince you to be my number 7, and that's hard.
Right.
That's hard, but
that's hard. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
and we
exactly
talk
right.
about that here too. Like every one of you in this room was the best where you were.
Yeah.
You're not like, how do you do that? Like, it's just like, you gotta have the courage just to kind of be you.
And that's a skill for a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us, if it's a skill, that means obviously some of us do better than others. But the cool thing is, because it is a skill, that means you can improve upon it. But that is tough. You almost, no matter what school you're at, by the way, but obviously at high level, UNC's, Stanford's, et cetera, you're getting all state champions, you're getting all school record holders, you're getting the kids that, if they're a female 2-miler, 950, second place on their team was 11 flat. Still good, by the way, but light years ahead. And now you join a team and you are one of 5 girls who broke 10 minutes in the 2-mile or something like that. And it's like, that's hard. That's just super. But both sides, I think it's hard. Even if you're number 1 at that new school, it's like, holy crap, they're breathing down my neck. And you still have to deal with all the other schools. That's just your one program.
And Katie Ledecky's on the swim team too.
Is that right?
Yeah, no, that was when we were there. Like, it's like, what, like,
oh, right.
Like, what are you supposed to, like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. Great point.
Like the swim team has like 3 gold medalists, right? It's ridiculous. No, it's hard. It's hard. Like, and like our people at the time, it's like, well, my buddy has his own startup, and this guy's up until 3 a.m. studying for chemistry, and I need to be up with it. And it's like, well, folks, like, you don't know what you don't know, but like being an
Yeah.
athlete at Stanford is just as impressive on a resume.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's hard to get that
Yeah.
message through.
Okay. Let's speed up here just a little bit. Give me, because I haven't asked, we're just going to talk about titles. At
Yep.
Penn State, your title was?
Director of operations. And then I think we added like a director of operations / communications because I was doing the SID stuff too at the time. Yeah.
Go to Washington and your title is?
Director of ops.
Okay. Go to Stanford. The title is?
I started as director of ops, and then the title changed to assistant athletic director for track and field.
Okay. And this, I don't want to say this is a new trend, but I'm seeing this where now, because I think of people like Jill Steele and things like we start to get these assistant or associate athletic director type titles in there. Okay. Now at North Carolina, your title is?
Associate director.
Associate director of track and field.
Yes.
Okay. Tell us, okay, so bridge the gap. Why'd we go? You talked about, maybe it was just purely cost of living. That could be enough right there.
Yeah.
Why'd we go to Chapel Hill?
Well, Mill took the job here. Like I said, we hosted Prefontaine on a Sunday. He took the job on like a Thursday, like the Thursday before that. So like it only like it was a wild series of days, because then we all started getting calls like opportunities here, opportunities there. Like, we want to do this, and I'm like, oh, no, Monday. I will talk to you on Monday. Like, so we're running a diamond league here, people.
Right.
But then so Mill took the job. And like, obviously, like I was invited to come along. Like, I never really thought about not coming along, but I'd never been here. Like, but to your point about college towns, like I know college towns, and that's what I missed about being on the West Coast in Seattle and San Francisco, right? Like I'd never set foot here until I came on my orientation, but I knew what it was, and I was 100% right. And like at Stanford, like it's and I mean none of this to pick on Stanford, because we had a great time there, but like it was like you talk to people and they're like, oh, they pay you for that? Do you have to teach too? Do you do research? And it's like, no, I don't. But here, like you go into the Starbucks and UNC stuff, and people are through the moon excited. And like we do well at an event. I get emails from the parking office, like congratulating us, right? Like, so like everyone around us is so excited. Cool. Yeah. And that's what I miss being on the West Coast for sure.
Yeah, I love that. All right. That's so cool. How many years at Stanford?
Almost 4. So 4 outdoor seasons.
And what year are you at UNC now?
So we started fall of 19. So this is year 5.
Okay. So I now want to have a discussion with you, Jess, pardon me, about the role of the director of ops, associate directors. So you have I'm from Alabama, so I got to do math here, 12, 17, 20 years of experience. First of all, give us kind of take all we talked about in a nutshell and tell us about your responsibilities, how they have changed, if any. I'm hearing a lot of meat stuff, which I guess I don't know why. I always think of the other stuff that we originally talked about, helping with budget, helping with recruiting, things like that. I'm hearing a lot of meat stuff. Tell me how your role, the role that you've accomplished here in those last 20 years has changed. Think about from your first day, figuring out together at Penn State to, a honest to God, truthful professional in the operations world of track and field collegiately.
Yeah. So I think back to like when I interviewed at Stanford, like Milton and I had a conversation, and he was like, listen, like you'll be the director of operations. That doesn't mean you do all of them. So it's like, it's up to you to tell us what to do what you want, and you tell us the rest. And that's how we've operated ever since. So it's like, we do a really great job of communicating amongst our staff, like of what responsibilities are. And I, up until this year, like I said, now that I've added coaching, but we have a new ops guy who's doing most of that stuff now. Like, it's like, I used to say when I was younger, like I need to put myself in position, or I need to put these coaches in position to do nothing but coach and recruit. But like, that's not really what happens, right? Because then it goes back to like what we were talking about in the first couple of minutes, where it's like, this is not a person you dump things on, So like, it's like your role is to make everybody's life a little easier, but it's not to take away the bad things, right? Like everybody still does their Caro logs, like everybody still does their concur and their budget stuff, right? But like we really try and centralize how we operate as a program, right? And like coming to UNC, it was like, okay, like Milt's like, listen, I'm gonna go get us a great coaching staff. You figure out everything else. So like it's like so for our first couple years here, like I'm like, listen, fellas, like you call nobody. If you have an issue, I will figure out who to call and I will call them and then they will call me back.
Mhm.
So I had to put myself in the position to be like the voice of the program within the department.
Mhm.
Like that way nothing was confused, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
that's one of
I
my
get
things
that.
is like, okay, like if three people call compliance asking the same question, then we
Right.
look like idiots,
Right.
right? Like, so like, that's kind of what my role is expanded to at this point is like, I need to know what's going on at all times because someone's going to call me and ask about it eventually.
Right.
Right. Like, so it's like, it's just kind of threading the needle that way. I'm still trying to do my best at doing that, despite the fact that I'm not ordering the sandwiches and doing the rooming lists anymore.
Mhm.
But it's sort of, Mild always refers to it as like a chief of staff, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So like I'm the one who's kind of like just managing things internally,
Mhm.
right? Like the past couple of hires we made, I've been the one doing a lot of the HR stuff on that. I've been the one making a lot of those initial phone calls, stuff like that.
Right.
Like so like it's really about like truly managing a program at this point.
Do you become, and you've been with Milt for you're going on 9 years now, and so
Mhm.
some consistency there. Not only
Yeah.
consistency, like I think I would assume you and Milt have a different relationship because you've been to two schools together. That
Yeah.
transition that you learn a lot about each other, and
Right.
that brings its own issues. I don't know if that's the right
Right.
word that you have to overcome. Versus if you guys would just had been at Stanford for 9 years.
Yeah.
Um, do you become like you use the term chief of staff, and that's kind of how I was when you were describing, I was like, that's kind of what I would have imagined
Mhm.
a chief of staff. Do you become like the right ear of a Milt when Milt's talking, because he's still the director, he's still running this
Yeah.
whole program.
100%.
Does he bounce ideas off of you? Does he talk about, you lose your, I hope this is not a real life example. I'm trying to use an example that I think has not happened at UNC. You lose your sprints coach who also coach jump. So do you
Mhm.
guys talk about, well, if we hired this person,
Yeah.
then this a person already on our staff can coach that, like
Yeah.
those kind of things, or is it more not that? I don't know.
No, I think it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, so when we came from Stanford, we bought like we have 7 positions at the University of North Carolina. We brought 5 of us from Stanford.
Right.
So like it was, and there's still 4 of us. So it's Milt, Mike Eskind, Nick
Yeah.
Farr, and me. So there's 4 of us who have all been together for minimum 6 years.
Great dudes, by
Right.
the way.
Great dudes.
Yeah.
And so like it's sort of just, but to your point, like it's over 2 locations too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
different.
it's like you kind of have to do a reboot on things. But I think our whole staff is pretty open with each other. Like we don't have, like if we have to hire somebody, we all talk about it, right? Like it's
Mm,
not like I'm gonna
mm.
make like we hired our director of ops last summer. Like I talked to him, Mike talked to him, he came and met with me in Austin. Like it's you got to be okay with all of us, you know?
Does the director of ops report to you or report to Milt?
Yeah, I'm the one who's managing him. Like
Yeah,
I think letter of the law, it's Milton's boss, but
sure. Good
like
point.
I'm the one who's doing it day to day.
So that's different through your career here too.
Yeah.
It's no longer just, I'm the director of ops. So you've got a director of ops,
Yeah.
which brings us to, and this, I think this is unique. I've not heard this. You're now coaching as well. How
Mhm.
does that work out? How did you had to divest, I assume you had to divest some of your responsibilities. That's where the
Yep.
new director, the
Yep.
solo director of ops came up. You haven't coached, I haven't heard you in any of these different places, Penn State, back to Bucknell, Washington,
Yep.
Stanford, saying, "Oh man, I really liked what they were doing when they talk about workout." I haven't heard you like show a
Mhm.
desire to coach. How'd this come
Right.
about and why?
So I mean I was a distance runner myself. Like
Right?
I've been at, I mean I've been at great programs, great across the board programs, but mostly strong distance programs,
Absolutely.
right? So it's not like I've never not been involved,
Mhm.
right? I hope my compliance people aren't listening, but like it's never like I haven't been at a lot of practices. I've never missed a meet,
Yeah.
right? Like so like I know how this all works, like I
Right.
know how this all flows, but it's like, are you actually like, so our women's distance coach left last summer, and so we had this role open up,
Right.
and like I said to you earlier, like it's in this role it's really hard to kind of establish yourself in a room full of really great coaches, right?
Sure.
But like, and so it's like, there's been times in my career where it's like, I open my big mouth when I shouldn't. And somebody says like, well, Jess, you're not a coach. And it's like, well, I refuse to believe I'm not more knowledgeable than a 22-year-old GA who is a
Yeah.
coach,
Yeah.
right? Like, so like, and I still don't think that's true. Like, I think you can be very relevant in this profession and not be a coach.
Right.
But I also like, now no one can tell me I can't,
Mhm.
you know, and it's just sort of worked for what we were looking for at the time. Like, I know all these women, I know all these people, like I already had an established relationship with them. Like the only difference was truly like making recruiting calls, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's,
So,
and
so
we
all of your director of ops roles, no involvement in recruiting, or
not,
maybe,
not other than on campus.
yeah, okay. I was going to say probably a better way
Yeah.
of asking that is no off-campus recruiting.
Yeah.
I assume as a director of ops, you were helping set up the visit and
For sure.
maybe making sure the
And
kids gets the academics or
yeah.
whatever.
And
Yeah.
no, taking people around taking
Mhm.
people around campus and stuff like that. Like,
Right.
and the first kid I ever took around campus at Penn State was Joe Kovacs.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It was all downhill after that.
Him and his mom.
That's so cool.
And this is how clueless I was. Like, I take him around campus, like I take him to the indoor track, like it's hydraulic banks. Like like I said, I'm a distance runner and I'm a geek. So I'm like, okay, like this many laps to a mile. This is one of 6 tracks in the
You're
country.
telling Joe Kovacs this?
Yeah. So listen, so like I like telling him and his mom, and Joe was not he was a little slighter at that time.
Sure.
So like I go down to the shot put ring and I'm like, and Joey, this is where you'll be. And that's all I said. And mom died. Mom's like, that's the cutest thing I've ever heard. So like, so yes, I've been involved in recruiting. I just haven't been making the calls until this year.
I hope we've improved a little bit on like what's relevant to the.
Right. I knew nothing else.
I love that. And Joey, this is where you'll be. I won't know what you're doing, but you'll be over
Right.
here. I know.
You'll be over here.
That's so
That's
awesome.
all I know.
Love him. He's a great dude. And, Ashley, just great people. So I love that. That was your first one. I love that a lot. So, you're coaching now, you're speaking my language, right? This is what I do all day is talk to coaches. And you certainly had some really amazing, talking specifically distance here, coaches around you and heard their speak and listened to them. Even your own high school coach was, pretty decent. You only ran 1 year of high school track and you made it to state, and it's kind of amazing. Do you think do you think coaching today, are you better at coaching today because you haven't been actively coaching for the past 20 years-ish? Or do you or did you have to learn your chops? So I don't know. Do you get what I'm kind of saying? Like,
yeah,
you're
no,
coming at it from a different angle than someone who's been coaching for 20 years, specifically.
So like you said, I've been around a lot of great coaches. Like all my best friends are great coaches, right? So it's like I know what it's supposed to look like, and it's not like you were saying, like the relationship with Milt and our staff. Like we have these conversations, right? Like what do we do to get better at this? Like and even the past couple of years, like I've been the one who's sort of, and I do it a lot now still. Like I if there's an issue in the other events, like I'm in on the meetings, like and that's not necessarily a coaching thing, but more of like a presence thing, I guess. Like, so like I've never been like somebody that's just like locked in the office all day, like I've always been around. But I think just over the years, just watching how people did things, like watching Milt, watching Greg, watching JD, watching a woman named Elizabeth DeBole, who was our women's distance coach at Stanford. She's now at Siena College in New York. Like just watching those interactions, and I think truly it just comes down to relationships, right? Like if you can build a relationship with a kid, like in our sports psych talks all the time about like the transitive property. Like we do these meetings, like, do you trust your coach? Yes. Coach, do you trust your athletes? Yes. And then he looks at the athletes and says, then why don't you trust yourself? Like, so I think it's just all building that circle, So I think having witnessed what I have, like, and I've been around Chris Johnson for goodness sakes. Like, I was with Chris for like 6 years at Penn State, and just like those people will run through a wall, right? Like, just if you ask them to, they'll do it, right? Like, so you just see how, because if you can't build that relationship on the front end, like the technical aspect has nothing to do with it, right? So like I think that's where I'm at an advantage coming in at this point, like where I do. Am I the greatest technical coach in the world? Probably not, but like I do know how to build relationships. I do know how to get to know a kid. I do know how to get a kid to trust me. You know, so like it's going to be an evolution for sure. And I guess I just it 22 or 23 or whenever I got into this, it was like I just didn't I don't know that I truly had the confidence to do that, you know?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And I wonder if it's stronger with you because you have observed a lot of coaches, a lot of, again, a lot of high level coaches too here. And we're talking about Milt and Greg and Beth and stuff. So you've had a lot, and for the type of career you've built so far today, it's still going on, which is amazing. You have to be a good observer. You have to, understand meets, understand people coming to meets, understanding the recruiting process, things like that. So I can see you being a really good observer with the coaches in front of you. And so now when it goes time to actually put in an application and coach, certainly there's still a little bit of like, I got to learn to ride the bike here just a little bit. I'm not coming from zero riding the bike here, but boy, I have watched a lot of great bike riders and bike coach riders, and so, but I think, for you to pick up really so strongly the relationship side, I think that's a real lesson for coaches out there. And that's why it kind of not bugs me, but, I see the importance of not just going to a clinic and it being 99% of, the spin versus the glide technique, how to get your distance runners long runs up and things like that. And it's like, yeah, that's important. Certainly the science part of this is extremely important, but you can be the best technical coach in the world and have no relationship. They will not be as good. They may still be good, because you have to understand the science part of it, but they will not get close to their potential. They just won't. They just won't. Okay, we got just a few minutes. You okay? We're right
I'm
at
good.
it.
I'm great.
Okay, all right, good. So talk to us about the evolution of this role of director of ops. I'll ask, I'll start it with the softball, maybe softball dumb question. Should more staffs have it? How come we haven't added it? How come, it's not at least every Division I team or something? I don't know. It should be all divisions, but let's stop there. Let's start there. And I'll have a follow-up question. So talk to us about this role of director of ops. Why don't we have it? Why should more schools have it? Maybe you can give us some advice on someone who wants one and they want to talk their administration into it, maybe how to start that process as well. Give us kind of that 30,000 foot level of this.
I mean, let's be honest, like if we're like the only comparable roster size to us is football, right? And how many directors of ops do they have? And we talked about this earlier, like how many support staff do they have? So we're running a football program with a tennis staff effectively. And that's we could add 4 of me and when we'd still be behind, right? Or 4 of Mike or 4 of Amin or whatever. But like, no, I think it's absolutely a necessary role. And that's why I think like the onboarding, the networking piece is really, really important. That this can be something. And it's not like and it doesn't have it can be something and it doesn't have to be the stepping stone to something else. You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of people think like this is my foot in the door that I can go on and be a coach. And sure, that might be possible, but like it doesn't necessarily have to go that way, right? Like this can be a long-standing career. And there's certainly those of us who are still around who have done that, like the Codys of the world and Matt Downs and Jill Steele at Oregon had been in for a number of years, but before moving on and it's a real thing. But I think the important thing that for coaches to realize, and we talked about this before, is like, if this is truly in its infancy, like we have to kind of work to build it up a little bit and kind of show people what this is supposed to look like and not just like bring somebody in and give them the keys and say, do this. Because then they're going to quit right away because it's going to be a terrible experience. So it's like but that's no different than like a GA sprints coach too. Like it's like you got to teach them something. Otherwise, like they're just going to feel like a failure because they don't know what to do.
Right.
And then you're going to be mad at them because they're not doing what you want them to do, but you
Mhm.
never really told them what to do.
Right.
So it's sort of a vicious cycle. But I think like just like establishing the role, like I said to you, like I'm not a great first impression person, and I might be better than I was, and I'm also not much of a talker, despite how I've rambled today. But like I've sort of made it a goal of mine is just to talk to people,
Yeah.
like go to meets and go sit next to Mouse and be like, hey, listen, like if you had this situation, what would you do? Like go sit next to Carol, like
Yeah.
go do all of those things, like, and it's not training, you know, like it's not like block starts. It's like
Right.
how are you running a really good program?
Yeah.
You know, and I've done that frequently the past couple of years. It's like, or not more than that, like half my career probably. But like it's like you gotta learn from others, right? And learning from others in this position is not based on results, you know. So that's where it's hard. Like I gave a presentation a couple of years ago at the convention on networking in this role, and I made a statement like the mistake a lot of people make is like they come to these things and they sit in the corner with their buddies and they talk about how they would coach Grant Holloway so much better and what they would do, and like go ask Mouse.
Stop having that conversation, by the way, guys.
They go ask Mouse. He's here. You're better off just talking to him than talking to your buddies about how you would do it. And it was funny. I walked out of the room and two of the guys from my presentation are talking to Mouse. And like I go up and I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. That was my fault. I told him what I said. And he's like, no, he's like, people need to hear that. Like, he's like, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
But no, I think the whole thing comes back to relationships, right? Like you just have to keep putting your face in front of people, even when it's hard. And I talk to our distance runners about that all the time. Like I get it. Like it's hard to talk to people. It's hard to put yourself in uncomfortable situations, but like you got to keep doing it. You got to keep trying, even when it feels awkward, right?
It's funny. I just watched, and it's a little cringe, but I just watched the roast of Tom Brady that was on Netflix. Have you?
Yeah, I can't do that because it would make me uncomfortable.
Oh,
yeah.
I told my wife, I go, look, I don't think it'll ever happen. But if anybody ever approaches me and says, hey, in your honor, Mike, we want to host a roast, make sure I say no. I don't think I can handle it. But to the point I was trying to make there, Kevin Hart, the host, kept saying, let's get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And he was talking about just, the cringe if we're about to say really bad things about someone we love, etc. But I think I kept hearing that. I was like, oh man, isn't that life? Like, hey, Jess, we want to hire you in this new role at Penn State. We don't really know what it is. We kind of think we know what it is. And it's like, that is not a role for someone who wants to be comfortable. That is someone who's like, all right, I'm going to be uncomfortable. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I will figure it out. Oh, hey, Jess, we want you to now move clear across the country to Seattle and do it over here. And it's like, that's not being comfortable. That's a big city, way away from family and friends, etc. That getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, I think is a kind of a life hack, if you will, for life. Like you will get farther if you can have that as a skill. Okay, let's get a couple questions because I'm over your time. Again, thank you so much. Can and should a director of ops role, not a student manager role, a director of ops role, so maybe another teacher or parent, occur on the high school level? And you haven't worked on the high school level, so you may not have opinions, but you've certainly seen a lot of high school programs and recruiting and things like that. Might you have an opinion there?
No, I think it would be certainly beneficial, right? Like, and I know a lot of high school ADs are doing, like, they schedule the buses, they do the insurance stuff, they schedule the competitions and things like that. So like at the high school level, and I'm just spitballing here because I've never really thought about it. Like maybe there's like the AD plus like an operations staff, like one or two like administrative people who work on those things, maybe not necessarily sports specific. Like I would think that would be pretty hard to do. Certainly at my high school, they wouldn't have any budget to add a high school director of ops or anything like that. But like you could certainly make that into something, like a parent or something like that. It's like one of those things that you just like. I'm thinking of high school cross country, and there's always the parent who hosts the barbecue at the end of the meet, right? Like, so it's something like that would just like it might take hold once you get it started.
Yeah, I don't want to diminish both roles when I say like a den mother, because
Yeah.
Den mothers, like for Cub Scouts and stuff like
Yeah.
that, are very important. So I don't want to diminish that role, but I'm also not diminishing a director of ops role saying den mother either. So
For
yeah, I
sure.
get
For
that.
sure.
Okay. Now, Jess, for you, what is I talk a lot with coaches, and I'll use a track analogy, and I'll say, hey, look, I know you've been coaching for 20, 25 years, but to use a track analogy, to use the 400-meter dash, you're barely at the 200-meter mark. I know it seems like you've run the whole race and you're at the finish line, but man, you've got 10, 20, 30 years to go.
Yeah.
Same thing in your role, Jess. You're still a young buck here. You've got plenty of time. You're not thinking of retirement. You may be thinking of retirement, but you are not into retirement at this age. You've got decades left to live and to be a professional. What does the future look like for you? Is it to be an associate director of track and field for your whole career? I'm not diminishing that, by the way.
No.
That'll be amazing. Is it to go full-time into coaching? I think of oh my gosh, who's my guy? He just retired or is retiring after this year, Virginia Tech, the head coach,
Dave. Yeah.
Cianelli. He, when I visited him, he told me, he's like, I actually don't coach a group. I'm the director. I help.
Yep.
He was a decathlete, so this helps. But he's like, if the throwers need help, I'll go over and help the throws coach, the jumpers, etc. So I think of you in that kind of like a director type role and helping your coaches be successful. Is it administration? I encourage a lot of track people to go into administration because that's where decisions are being made on our sport. And I would love to have people who understand and love our sport. What do you think maybe the future holds for you?
I think Dave Schinelli is my star, right? I think, and like I said earlier, like I think my career has sort of just been chasing a moving target the whole time, but like I think it like the end of the tunnel becomes a little bit more narrow as we go here, and I guess I'm putting this on record, but like I think I can run the show somewhere.
Yeah, I think so.
I just got to figure out how to position myself to convince somebody that I can do that.
I was about to say someone's going to take a chance because that's new. Just like someone took a chance when they hired you as a director of ops and put you in charge of big track meets and the Prefontaine, Diamond League. I mean, that's right. Someone has to take a chance. Someone has to stand out. Someone has to see the skills that you're bringing to the table that would actually work out. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that.
For sure.
I love that. Okay, Jess, thank you so much. I want to leave today's podcast here with you with a little bit of encouragement because you're not busy enough. So I want to encourage you to do more work. And here's what I mean by that. So I love the work that you and some others do at like convention at USTFCA when you have these director of ops. We almost have like a director. I think we do, not almost. We have a track for director of ops. There's, we have probably 5, 6, 7, 8 topics and stuff like that. And I love that. However, I think that is, and I could be wrong, but I think that at least majorly only hits people who already are in the role. Right. I don't know if a kid today, a kid's a senior in college and says, man, I don't want to coach, but man, I love track and field. How do I keep involved? I love this part of what my coach does, but we don't have a director, so they can't see it. They don't have anywhere to go right now for that. So what I'm going to encourage you and your contemporary. So a lot of the people that we talked about, the Matts and Cody's and Jills and things like that is, you guys are all fairly active or at least have good accounts on LinkedIn. There's a way to write articles on LinkedIn. Heck, Twitter actually now has ways to write articles on Twitter. Whatever your medium is, it doesn't have to be written. I just think about written because I'm terrible at it. So maybe you're good at it, but written, or maybe start a podcast geared towards kind of pulling back the curtain of what an operational role is for our sport, because I think it will help other people to see that it is a viable profession. It's not a stepping stone into coaching. It may be, but that's not why you get an operate. Trust me, no one wants to hire you as their director of ops knowing or thinking that in 2 years you're going to hop to go become a coach somewhere. It's the same here. That's our number one question when we interview here for Gill. It's like, hey man, like, are you done coaching? Because we hire a lot of former coaches too, and it's like, are you done coaching? This ain't 2 years and you go back coaching. That's a waste of your time and our time. We're looking for career people here. Same thing. Director of ops. You tell that coach, yeah, I want to be coach, so I'll do this for a year or two. You ain't getting that job more than likely. So seeing that it's a viable profession, and I think it would continue to help raise the I don't want to call it importance, but the sight of this as an actual profession. We have this, we know there's a profession and a path for coaching. What about this operational administration side? So I just want to encourage you and whoever, your little gang of operational people that, you've grown up in this profession with, just to find a way. It could be through Twitter, it could be, something like that, but find a way to pull that curtain back and show others how you guys have made amazing careers out of this. You specifically here, Jess, have made an amazing career and have, I talk about the superpower of a coach is the positive impact they make on young people, 18 to 22 and here in college. You do the same thing. You don't get looked at maybe necessarily, and I'm saying you, the general, not you, Jess, in the same way, because you don't have maybe coach in front of your title, but man, coaches can't do their jobs without you. Things don't happen without you. And that is important to our sport of track and field. So just want to encourage you, you got a lot in here. You've created a lot of the map. Now show people that map is actually obtainable.
Yeah, thank you. And that stuff I think about all the time is like, how do we show people that this is real, right? Sure. And this is really important. And it's I've probably said it before. I'm not sure if it was when we were talking or during the actual recording, but like when somebody says, like, oh, I get stuck with all the ops stuff. It's not stuck. Right. Like it's important. And if you want to be a head coach, like, you need to learn what actually goes on here. So like, right. This is not, the ops position is not purgatory, you know, like it can be pretty cool. And I say it all the time. Like I get paid a lot of money to mess around most days. Right. Like, so like and I do a lot of work, but at the same time, this is really, really fun. And Sam and I have had those conversations about how we portray that at the convention, and good. And I think we've made a little bit of headway there, and it's like it's sort of just like, yeah, like you can be the best technical coach in the world, but if you can't like really organize people and organize a staff, like I don't know that you'll be very successful, right? So.
Yep. I love it. Jess, thank you so much. I know you are busy. You're just coming off of championships, and we've got regionals staring at you, nationals, trials this year. Maybe you're going to one of the high school meets. I'll be at the Nike outdoor meet there in Oregon as well. So really grateful. You spent a lot of time with us, man. I think I'm hopeful that this type of interview helps again, shed that light. I keep having that visual of pulling the curtain back on showing that director of ops, that's a real role. It's not the role you shove off things to. It's people that can help support the program and support you as the head coach, maybe specifically to help continue to move forward and do what you guys and gals all do. And that is, again, the positive impact that you make on young people. So Jess, thank you so much, man. I love you to death. I think what you're doing is highly important, and I'm really, truly just grateful for what you do for our sport. It's really important. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. This was awesome.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Thanks for being here. Join us next week. We'll do it all over again. Maybe we're going to go out and find a director of ops for high school. I bet you somewhere it exists. I just know it does. So stay with us. Come back next week. We'll do it all over again. Have a great week, everybody.